Welcome to Inside Auto Podcast, where we feature everyone and anyone you'd want to talk to in and out of the automotive industry.
Ilana Shabtai here, host of Inside Auto Podcast, where we interview top dealers, GMs, marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in and out of the automotive industry. And before we introduce today's guest, this episode is sponsored by AutoLeadStar.com. The AutoLeadStar platform is built on a technology so powerful, it allows you to market, sell, and service cars as you would in the real world at scale and online, making one-to-one matches between shoppers and inventory. AutoLeadStar is the only platform that is powered by scale, speed, and specificity to change the way dealers do marketing today. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Brian Free. For those of you who don't know him, Brian is the Senior Director of Digital E-commerce at AutoNation. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. He's actually, down the road from me in Fort Lauderdale, which is exciting. We could have even done this in person, but Zoom is the way of the world. But just to give Brian a bit of an introduction, he, like I mentioned, is the Senior Director of Digital E-commerce at AutoNation, where he started his career in 1997 in IT. Brian was part of the original team that launched AutoNation.com and handled building out the entire SEM strategy, CRM strategy, everything that comes with the .com era. Along the way, he's had many positions with the company, and now he oversees all of AutoNation's digital presence, which includes over 400 separate websites and all of AutoNation's SEO activities, as well as social media, lead generation. We'll get into all of that. Brian, thank you so much. You're obviously extremely busy, so thank you for being here with me today.
Of course, my pleasure.
So this podcast, it's a tradition on this podcast to really understand how our guests get into automotive. It seems like no one gets into automotive on purpose, but maybe your story is different. And I know you've had a long ride with AutoNation, but how did you get into automotive?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good story. So I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and for folks who don't know, back in the day when, and this is pre-internet, so it's another little interesting piece there. So this was 1997. This gentleman, he's passed away now, but his name was Wayne Huizenga. He was a huge entrepreneur here in South Florida. He founded 3 Fortune 100 companies. He started out with a waste management company. Then he moved into, if folks remember, Blockbuster Video. So I was reading an article one day in 97, and it's like, hey, Wayne Huizenga is starting this new company, and it's going to be in the automotive space. And the original model was we were going to be a standalone used cars only, not new cars. And we also purchased at the time National Rent-A-Car and Alamo Rent-A-Car. And the whole model was like, hey, we were going to take rental cars and move them into used cars, whatever. So I thought it was a really interesting story. So and I said, Wayne Huizenga, I said, right on Florida, this is a great opportunity. So I literally wrote a letter to the HR department and told them that. And said, hey, I live in Fort Lauderdale, and I've always admired Wayne Huizenga, and I'd be really interested in starting something new. So they called me like a day later, and I went in for an interview, and they hired me on the spot. So I was like probably employee like number 10 or 11, something like that. That way back then. The company now is actually, this is our 25th anniversary. So, I came in, I'm actually 24 years with the company, so I'm a little bit, there were people here starting. So, yeah, so that's how it's like, when I tell people, I wrote a cover letter, they're like, huh?
But you hand wrote it and mailed it in.
Absolutely, yeah. You dropped it right off, and they, like I said, mail moves fast. They called me the next day, and I literally lived 5 minutes from, where the office was located, and, met a bunch of people, and they were like, hire, when do you want to start? And I was like, tomorrow.
I love that story. And I think it's great. The Senior Director of Digital E-commerce hand wrote a letter and got his job at AutoNation. That's wonderful. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that. And so you've been there ever since.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about automotive. I was like an IT consultant. I started my career on the IT side of the house. I worked primarily in transportation, like aviation and cruise lines. So automotive was completely new to me, and it's still a challenge. Automotive is a really unique business, and sometimes you bang your head every day, say, I can't believe I've been doing this long, but it certainly keeps me challenged.
Yes, for sure. I've been in automotive for, I think, 3 or 4 years now, and I'm always asking myself how the industry moves along. But let's talk a little bit about SEO. I know this is a huge area of responsibility for you, and I'm really happy you joined us today because it's a topic that we haven't really covered on the Inside Auto podcast yet, but it's such an important topic for automotive. So let's talk about how you optimize. Also, you have hundreds of websites, so I'd love to know how you prioritize, optimize, and are you using any specific tools that you can share with us?
Yeah, so we do use a variety of methods. We do some, because there are so many websites, and I'm a big believer in like not putting all of my eggs in one basket. So I have, in some cases we have website vendors like the dealer.coms and the dealer inspires of the world. So sometimes some of our sites I let them do a little bit of work. I find them, they use the same strategy for every dealer. Like it's a lot of cookie cutterness,
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, we went out to find traditional SEO agencies that weren't in automotive and said, hey, let's see what they can do, that they don't give us that same kind of cookie cutter approach that every other dealer is getting. So we manage that. So, and we also have in-house people doing it as well. So our strategy is it's local, it's brand specific, right? So Mercedes, Fort Lauderdale, Mercedes, Miami. And we really have a great story to tell in organic. Once the pandemic hit, right, the first couple of months in when we were in lockdowns and all that other stuff, we expected the worst, right? We were, all hands on deck. We stopped our paid our paid advertising strategy. We went dark on TV, but organic just took off. In the last month, of these 400 plus dealer websites, last month we had our most traffic ever. We had 2.4 million unique users on our dealership website. And to put that in perspective, a year ago that was about 1 million people. So we literally doubled our traffic. And we also, and with that, and people are like, what are you doing there? And I'm like, this is people like, my hypothesis is that, folks would, look at websites, of course, but they still wanted to go out to the dealership. They went over on a Saturday, they did test drives, they did all that kind of stuff. I told folks now, I said, now everything's being transacted online. They're at our website, they're picking the car they want, they know the payments, they may do a credit app, so all that stuff has just been, all that's being done online now. And before, it just wasn't that story. So also too is these are in-market customers. Like, we look at it's called close rate, right? So we look at leads and sales. We were always averaging about, maybe in the, these are more in-market customers than, somebody on a cars.com or whatever. But our close rate is like 16% now from our organic traffic. It's just unbelievable what it's done. The other big story is Google. Last year we spent, one of our projects pre-pandemic was to optimize our GMB profiles. So what we did, we went out and we, got professional photography done in all of our stores. We took advantage of all the little features that they offer that, besides just connecting to the website, you can do things like schedule service now. Also, Google allows live inventory on all those GMB profiles. We were in a pilot with them. So all of our inventory is online there now too. And that's just another one. I tell people that your GMB profile is really another website. It's just, we added in, once we added an attribution, in January of 2020, we had about maybe 2,000 unique leads that came from GMB to our website. Last month, we had 18,000 leads that were generated off of GMB. Close rate of 20.
All your stores.
All GMB. So all of our GMB profiles, just people clicking from there for our website, and we follow them through. 23% close rate. So I'm just telling everybody, I'm like, these people are in market, they're ready to go. So it's just incredible. And this is free, right? This is a free organic traffic. And I'm like, hey, so what we've done is, like I said, is we've dialed back a lot of our paid. We've also dialed back a lot of our third party, because I'm like, organic is still in the bucket. And plus with the inventory challenges that every dealer is facing right now, I'm just like, why are we spending money to attract customers when I can do it for free and highly optimized? So it's been a really great story.
Wow. And of that, going back to the first part of your answer, of that 2.4 million from last month, do you know the percentage that was organic?
That's
organic. Oh, wow. And do you know roughly what the percentage of, what percentage of your total traffic is organic?
It's about 65, 70%.
Wow. That's very impressive.
Incredible.
That's really impressive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, the other big thing we did, in terms of, in my world was another big one, which I encourage all other dealers to do too, is just optimizing, right? So we really worked hard on both, desktop and mobile, just to, clean navigation, clear, simple CTAs, not 15 different CTAs, confusing the customer. We just want them, come in, and we've done focus groups too. We said, well, what do people want to do when they get to the website? They want to look at cars. That, like, they immediately go to new car inventory, search, filter, see results. That's what they're doing, and that, so with all those optimizations, like, that's another thing is our conversion rate. Our conversion rate a year and a half ago was probably about 3.4% or so. Our conversion rate now is 6%. That counts leads, phone calls, and chats. Yeah, I think it's industry leading. I'm super happy with that number, and run around here all day and tell people about that, because it's a great story and people need to understand it.
Yeah. Now, do you, for all the websites, and again, let me just remind our listeners, over 400 websites that Brian is optimizing and managing right now, do you streamline all of that? So, for example, the way that the CTAs lie on the page, or the certain language, or are you taking the opportunity to really A/B test between your sites? What does that look like for your strategy?
Yeah, great question. A little bit of both. So we definitely strive for consistency, right? So that, as much as I can, that we use the same terminology in our CTAs. We have the same layout strategy for, like, homepage, like what tiles we're using, in addition to the inventory, like things like, we'll buy your car or schedule service. So we do a lot of A/B testing on that, obviously, to see which ones are getting traction. There's a little bit of a play in there in terms of that the OEMs manage these, they have a big say in these sites too, right? So they do things like look and feel and color palettes, and even some of them just drive us crazy, like, the fonts and the language we can use. So we also, so basically all of our sites, whenever we build unique content ourselves, we always run it by OEM compliance to make sure they're on board. But that's one of the other things in the SEO world that we do is we build lots of custom landing pages. So, specific make and model pages, then we pepper in all of our locations. Also, two things that are interesting that we would never expect when we built landing pages, but things like we built a landing page for, like, how to set up Apple CarPlay and how to set up Android. It's amazing the traffic that those pages get, that people are just a quick way to find out how to do this. We thought, oh yeah, it's just a nice and convenient thing to have. But we also do a lot of, which gets a lot of traction, is we've really built out a lot of, like, not as much now with the inventory challenges, but previously, like, all of our specials and offers, right? Our finance offers and leasing offers, build dedicated pages for them. And then we moved it into service. So, we have service coupons. So we built dedicated pages for that. And that's really, again, it's a really another way that, the customers can come in multiple doors on a website, but ultimately, once they get there, they're converting. And that was our mission accomplished.
Yeah, that's a really smart strategy. And on that, I'm interested in knowing how you kept up with, because automotive it changes by the minute. I mean, OEM disclaimers will change, pricing will change, incentives change month over month. When you have those special landing pages, how are you keeping up? Did you have some kind of API that was changing in real time and hooked up to these data sources, or?
We're heading that way certainly for specials, and that I mentioned, like the finance offers and lease offers and service specials. We definitely built out an API for that, because they expire every single month.
Yeah.
They have unique disclaimer language. So we literally have another team that builds and manages those, but we extract those. Also, another cool thing we did was in Google My Business, there's Google Posts. So we built a little engine and we post those specials. So every week, Google gives you points, right? We want to make sure we end up in the map pack, or we end up on page 1. So what they look at on JB, like, are you, answering reviews? Are you putting photos up there? And then so we have now we have this natural cadence that we're handing out all these offers every week, and that just raises us as well. And they come like a dealership accolades. Like, we had 64 dealers that were JD Power Dealers of the Year. We put that on Google Posts. We have 140 dealers that are Carfax recognized dealers. We put that, we wait a month to put out another post. So we're really expanding that area and putting out really neat things. You mentioned earlier I know that we're going to talk about like social media, that we're really big at that. Like, okay, here's our reputation score. We do that as a post. So it's just really consistently putting out information that draws people back to us.
But that's all manual.
Pseudo manual. Like we have a developer team that kind of built have to do an API to get the offer, and they have to do a post on GMB, but so it's half automated.
Okay.
We are trying to go faster.
Yes, I'm sure that is the direction. And you mentioned the reputation management, and I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to give you a big kudos on that. I saw a press release earlier this month that AutoNation has like 90 to 95% of their reviews are 4 or 5 star reviews, which it's such an amazing thing because I was just talking about this on a different podcast episode where I don't know how this shows me as a consumer, but I'm so inclined to leave a review when I'm angry or when I'm not happy. So the fact that you have set up the culture and the infrastructure to push happy customers to post reviews, that's really the key to the success. And so I was really happy to see that, and a huge kudos to your team. How did you build that kind of culture with the AutoNation?
Yeah, so we actually we have a partner where we use reputation.com. Mm-hmm. So it's really that you hit right on it. It's building that culture to make sure we ask for reviews, right? Because you're right. It's what you get right is that super happy they're going to do it on their own, and then super annoyed people are going to do it on their own too. But we really want to get that big sweet spot in the middle. So, one is building that culture in the store to ask for reviews. We also leverage other channels, like we have all of our websites. We have another partner, Active Engage, runs our chat. So they help us as well. So when someone chats in and says, hey, I have a good experience, they'll shoot them a link and say, hey, why don't you share with that, show us more. We've also now moved into, which we think is really important, because it also gets unfortunately, a lot of negative reviews of service. Right, that's if we have a separate GMB profile for every one of our service centers, so we're really working hard to make sure that we're building our reputation score there as well. And really, because reputation.com, they have what they call it a reputation score. And so we kind of went around for a couple of years and said, hey, that's what matters. And it's a combination of things that a good score. But most consumers, they don't know what a reputation score is. They're looking for the stars, right? That's what they look for. They look for 5 stars, right? And say, okay, this is going to be a good experience. So we kind of moved ourselves off of that and just said, keep reinforcing the 5 stars. Keep reinforcing the 5 stars. That's what matters, and that's going to draw. And I think that's a big piece of what draws eyeballs, not only just to our site organically, but then drives them to convert. Because they're like, hey, people are telling about a great experience they had. That makes me more confident to give you my personal information and engage in a conversation with a sales associate.
Yeah, of course. And that feeds into your whole organic strategy, and that's probably
exactly.
A part of the reason why you have 2.4 million organic visitors, and that's a huge
accomplishment. It's an amazing number.
Yes. And what do you think about when I think about the future of SEO and automotive, the thing that comes to mind, and I'm not an SEO expert, although I wish I were, I think about voice and search, voice search. Are you thinking about that at AutoNation, and how are you guys going to set up for success?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a big part. About a year or two ago, I thought it was going to be just huge, right? Like I thought everything was going to be search, voice search activated. But it's kind of like it's plateaued, I think. But there's a steady stream. So we use a business listing service. So right now we're currently using Yext. So they have a pipeline directly into like Alexa and Google search. Oh, cool. So things like if you did like, Mercedes-Benz Fort Lauderdale, Alexa, it's going to come up and it'll tell our store hours, our service department hours, and our phone numbers. So that's really, we get the most out of that. Driving directions comes up quite a bit as well. So we're always looking at that kind of thing. I'm sorry?
What did you say that was called? Yext?
Yeah, Yext.
Yes.
Okay. YEXT. So they're like a directory listing service. What they do for us is that, like they manage all of that third-party stuff. Like Google, we still manage ourselves. They can automate it for us, but we just think it's too critical that we don't want to hand that off to a third party. But they do power Bing. They power like things like yellowpages.com. So any of those automotive websites that are out there, right? We have 260 locations. We change store hours all the time. It's just they kind of keep all that data clean, and then with one button, like we just opened a new store on Friday. So it's literally just you load in a store and push publish, and out it goes, out to all those websites, and it's done in one stop. So it's super helpful for us.
Great. Yeah, that's something that everyone should be looking into, all of our listeners today. And before we sign off, let's talk about what you think some of the biggest challenges in automotive will be in the next, let's say, year, 2 years. We obviously just came out of a very aggressive year and a half. So what are you seeing for the future of automotive?
Yeah. Well, our biggest struggle, like everybody's having, is new car inventory. To kind of put it in perspective, it's an eye-popping number, but so May of 2020, we had 76,000 new cars online. Yesterday, we had 21,000 new cars online.
Wow.
So it's a super challenge, right? So, we're doing everything we can. Like I've been 24 years. I have had multiple general managers call me up and say, stop sending me traffic, stop sending me customers because I have nothing to sell them. And I'm like, this has never happened ever. So we're tackling it two ways. One is obviously we're always offering up used car alternatives. We're actually in decent shape in used cars. We're probably maybe about 10% under what we were, a year ago. So we're in decent shape there. So we push a lot of traffic there. But also too is we've adapted it, right? So now we're literally selling into our pipeline, which we've never done before, right? So we made sure we put all of our in-transit inventory online, which wasn't before, and now the team is literally selling cars that don't arrive for 3 months. People are putting deposits there. Yep. So it's really upended how we do our business, but so that's our biggest challenge by far, because we don't see anything good on the horizon. The chips are still really short, and I'm sure you heard like what manufacturers are doing. Like they're building cars with less options, so less chips. They're building out cars without the chips and storing them places. There's upwards to like Ford has 20,000 pre-built vehicles just waiting for chips. They're storing all over Detroit. So we think that the bottom is coming there because we don't think we've hit it yet. We're now thinking the bottom is going to be July and August, where we'll absolutely be down into the teens in new car inventory. But then it'll slowly start to build its way back. So I think that's our biggest challenge, and like I said, we're just adapting and figuring out ways to sell around it. The second piece is what everybody else is doing, and the manufacturers are big into too, is digital retailing, right? Like buy online. AutoNation's been in this business for quite some time. We built out our original buy online on AutoNation.com probably about 6 years ago with all the components, right? Credit app, make an appointment, value your trade, all those components. So generally, our strategy has been if you go to any of our dealer sites, is that when you're on the vehicle detail page and you see the buy online button, we drive them back to AutoNation.com and let them transact there and do that digital piece there. But unfortunately, the OEMs, like how they are, is they're getting in that space, right? And they're really challenging us in some cases. Like our two biggest brands were Audi and Hyundai. They just came out and said, hey, look, you have to use a digital retailing solution. We showed them AutoNation.com, and they're like, this ain't it. But at least in those two particular brands, they gave us choice and said, hey, you can use one of these website vendors, or you can use a Roadster or a Modal or something like that. And they're getting aggressive. So one is they tie co-op behind it, and like folks like Hyundai, they mandated, and they put $300 a car a month, and I'm just like, I can't say no to that. I have to use that solution. And then Audi said the same thing. Said, hey, if you're not certified or you don't pick a certified tool, you're going to lose out on. And now where they're going is they're going to tier 1, and they're like, hey, if you don't use a certified digital retailing tool, you may not show up on, like, say, Honda.com, right? And that's just a no-go for us. So we've got our toe in the water. We probably have about 65-ish stores on a digital retailing platform. So it works, right? They're good closers. We see anywhere between 20 and 25% close rates. But it's just, the struggle is, and why it's on my radar now is just that, because we've been talking to everybody, and I keep saying, hey, if you tell us to use like a Roadster, right, it conflicts with like our CRM strategy, right, that we want to have. We have one CRM, we want to have one showroom selling process, right? And all of a sudden we've got this hybrid on a certain brand, using a different tool, right? And the Roadsters and those folks are trying to get into all those businesses, CRM, in-store selling, And we just like, this just doesn't work for us. It just makes our life complicated, but they're going to force us into it. So I just have to play by the rules and see who's up next. I think Chrysler is going to be very close to making a decision soon. Honda, BMW, they're all like, kicking the tires. So like I said, I just have to play that game with them and move on a dime when it comes. The other big thing for AutoNation, kind of on our radar for the balance of years, is we're in acquisition mode again. So we're in the middle of acquiring, it's called the Peacock Automotive Group. It'll be our entry into our 18th state. They're based in South Carolina, so it's a new state for us. But for my world, right, I need to stand up 16 websites in one day. It's a lot of work. I mentioned we opened we're back in the standalone used car business. It's called AutoNationUSA.com. We just opened a store in San Antonio on Friday. We've got 5 more stores coming this year in AutoNation USA. We also have a standalone collision center for Porsche. We're going to be the first dealership in the country that'll have it's just a Porsche service center, no showroom. There's a 24-bay service center, it's going to be in McKinney, Texas, about 20 miles from our retail store. So we're going to open that next month. So, all that stuff on top of my day job is just, acquisitions and getting these new stores onboarded and into our ecosystem is always a challenge. I tell people around here, I said, it's going to be a long summer for everybody on my team, but that's what we do. And we're excited about adding all these stores. So it's been about 3 years since we've did any acquisition activity. So we're super excited about that.
Wow. Congratulations on all of that. That's really exciting.
Thanks. Yeah.
Back to the manufacturer stuff. We can have a whole nother podcast on regulations, and we should, because and I'll send you a piece that I just wrote for dealer marketing about this, because I basically broke down everything that is wrong with OEM regulations and how it should literally just be like, do you have an open API? Good. Then you can be Honda approved. And it should be nothing else. And I think we totally are aligned with that. And it frustrates me that, that the data integration isn't a first priority yet for manufacturers. So we can have a whole nother discussion on that. We will.
Totally. Yeah, I'll tell you one more quick story on that. Like, also, they don't care. Like, they don't get digital still. Like when we're doing these acquisitions, they're like, when a dealership goes through a buy-sell, like they force us to, stand up new websites. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, we won't give you the key to the code until the day of the buy-sell. And, a couple of years ago, that would mean like we will go dark for like 2 weeks. I'm like, how could this be acceptable to you guys that we can't build a website ahead of time and have it ready to go on the day we do the buy sell? It's just, I had to get creative and things like that, but they don't care. And I'm just shaking my head just saying how that's not a part of your site. Or they'll be like, hey, you have to wait a week and a half until we enter it into our GM OnStar system before we'll approve it. I'm just like, how can you work a 7 business days out in this kind of digital world? It's just unbelievable to me that it still occurs. Yes. Let's have that podcast.
Definitely a challenge. No, for sure. Thank you for sharing. Definitely a challenge for automotive, and I assume it will be transforming in the next couple of years. But Brian, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today and for all your awesome stories and your content. It's been such a pleasure. And if you liked this episode, for those that are listening, please tune in InsideAutoPodcast.com. We're on all mainstream apps, Spotify, iHeart, Apple. You can find us there. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. It was great meeting you. Have a great day now. Bye there, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Inside Auto Podcast. Check out our other episodes with top entrepreneurs and industry leaders.